Imagine this. A nursery so quiet you can hear dust falling. The curtains are drawn, but they flutter anyway, as if someone is breathing behind them. The fireplace hasn't been lit in days. The child doesn't seem to notice. She's 7. Her name is Elira, though she rarely uses it. Everyone else does. She doesn't. She's kneeling before the standing mirror, barefoot on stone tiles. Her nightdress pools around her like water. One hand pressed flat against the glass, the other curled to her chest. She's not looking at herself. She's looking at her, the girl inside. She's awake today, Elira whispers. She knows my name. A nursemaid stiffens. Another glances toward the door. No one speaks. They've learned not to. In a palace filled with secrets, some are safer when left uncorrected. When a princess speaks to a mirror, you do not correct her. You smile, you nod, and you call it imagination. The girl in the mirror tilts her head. Elira copies her. Or does she? She doesn't blink when I do, Elira says, almost gleeful. She's not me. This is how it begins. A royal bloodline known for its purity, its perfection, its sacred continuity. The kind of continuity that folds in on itself like rotting fruit. Elira was born from cousin to cousin, niece to uncle. Generations of breeding not for love but for legacy. Her mother once said the family tree was more vine than tree. Tangled, suffocating, never reaching toward the sky. The servants don't talk about that. They don't talk at all, especially not when King Virion enters. His boots echo like judgment, always slow, always final. He stands in the doorway, arms crossed beneath his robe of wine-red velvet. His beard is black and streaked with grey. His eyes are unreadable. Not because he hides his thoughts, but because there may be none left. Elira turns to him, smiling. She wants to be let out. The king says nothing, not a word. He watches his daughter as if watching a candle flicker. Beautiful, unstable, and easily extinguished. Now imagine you are that child. You don't understand the whispers. You don't know the word inbreeding. You only know that your head hurts sometimes when you think too hard, that people smile too widely around you, that they always say, "Yes, princess," even when you're wrong. You think the girl in the mirror is lonely, that she's real, and you want to bring her here. Before we go deeper into this history, before the wedding lace, the bleeding, the silence that sealed her name, you should consider something. Subscribe to this channel, because stories like Elira's were never meant to be told. They were hidden behind polished glass, and you might be the only one still looking. Later that evening, the mirror is covered. Just linen, nothing ceremonial, nothing formal. But Elira screams. She thrashes until her fingernails bend back. The guards are called, the physician summoned. She is restrained, not punished. The king watches, and still, he says nothing. The following morning the mirror is uncovered again. The linen folded neatly. The reflection returned. Elira kneels, and the girl in the mirror smiles. They call it sacred blood, but it smells like rot. There's something sick in the corridors of this palace, and it's not just in the stone or the silence. It's in the children, in their bones, in their minds, in their mirrors. Elira curtsies every morning to a portrait hung beside her bed. The woman in it is barely older than Elira herself, pale, soft-featured, with the same sloping hazel eyes and same crescent-shaped freckle near the left nostril. Her name was Lisbeth. Elira doesn't know her as grandmother. She calls her the first. No one corrects her. Lisbeth died in childbirth at 17. The child, a son who never opened his eyes, was buried beside her. No tomb, no epitaph, just a faded entry in the family Bible, Lisbeth of the House Vale, blessed be her womb. But no one speaks of her aloud, not because of shame, because of repetition. There were others, dozens, names scribbled into margins, faces painted and hung like warnings, the women who looked like Elira, who bled like Elira, who died before anyone could teach them to lie about what was happening. Lady Rainey makes her recite them, every morning after lessons, while the ink is still drying on her fingers and her eyes are heavy with fever. Elira, begin. Elira stares at the floor. Lisbeth of the House Vale, Aveline of the Southern Line, Mira, child of the White Bed, Callian, who sang in the Rose Court, Jessa, bride of the Third Emmerich, Leora. She trails off. She always does, because the next name is hers. Lady Rain says nothing, just waits, arms crossed, lips pressed so tightly they've gone white. "You will know your blood," she says, "or drown in it." The court doesn't say anything, not where anyone can hear, but the staff whisper, in the kitchens, in the stables, in the long hallway between the portrait gallery and the locked chamber. They know what's happening, they always have. It's what happens when a dynasty becomes obsessed with purity, when cousins become lovers, when nieces become brides, when wombs are traded like heirlooms and bloodlines double back on themselves like a noose. The people outside the gates call it tradition, legacy, divine birthright. Inside the palace, they call it what it is, a curse. Court physician Brenziel keeps a thick leather book. He's been adding entries since Elira was 2. Every episode, every hallucination, every bleeding nose, every whisper into mirrors. But he doesn't call them symptoms. He calls them visitations. Elira is attuned, he says one morning while examining the bruises on her arms from a night terror. Her blood remembers. It reaches backward. King Virion nods. That's all he ever does. Nods, signs, watches, never stops, never saves. It's a strange thing, being born royal in a house where no girl lives past 17. Where portraits outnumber memories, where you look at your face in oil and don't know which century you're from. Elira stands before the Great Wall of Ancestors, each frame gold-leafed, each name engraved in silver. She tilts her head. So do they. She lifts her chin. So do they. She smiles, just slightly. Only one smiles back, a girl in a red dress with a missing right eye. Painted that way, not damaged. The nameplate has been scratched clean. Someone tried to forget her, but the eye socket remains, empty, staring, and Elira can't look away. You wonder sometimes if memory lives in glass and paint, if it waits, if it watches, if it remembers the hands that buried it. They took her dolls the morning the blood came, no warning, no ceremony, just gone. One moment, she was brushing the hair of a wax-faced girl named Rosalind. The next, the toy chest sat open, hollow, as if it had never held anything at all. In its place, folded robes, a new brush with pearl inlay, a pouch of dried lavender, and a note, unsigned. For composure. Elira was 10. The blood had been thin, almost beautiful, a single smear on linen, like paint from a broken petal. She whispered it to the mirror. "I think it's begun." And the mirror whispered nothing back. That's when everything shifted. The cooks began steeping her milk with balm leaves and valerian. "To help you sleep," they said. But she didn't sleep. She floated. Through halls, through lessons, through voices that spoke at her like wind through reeds. Solène noticed first. "Don't drink that," the handmaid murmured one night, pressing a cloth into Elira's hands beneath the covers. "It dulls the part of you that should scream." Elira blinked. "Why would I scream?" Solène didn't answer. She just tucked the girl's braid behind her ear and left before the guards saw. The invitations to dine with the king became more frequent, then mandatory, always after dusk, always alone. The dining hall was vast and quiet. Gold candelabras, silver goblets, food she didn't recognize. He would sit at the head. She was placed beside him, not at the child's end of the table anymore, but next to the carved lion chair. He would not touch her, not yet. He would only ask questions. "How are your dreams? Do you hear the old names? Have you seen the girl in red again?" She would nod, and his lips would twitch. Not into a smile. Something else. Something like hunger pretending to be pride. Then, one night, a new name arrived. Prince Emmerich, her uncle, her mother's younger brother. Sent away when Elira was a baby, after a disagreement no one ever explained. Now, summoned back. He arrived under torchlight. Tall, wrapped in fur, his hair the colour of rust. his eyes sunken deep into his skull, circled in purple like bruises. When he dismounted, he didn't greet the king. He walked straight to Elira, knelt, and said, "You've grown to look just like her." No one said who her was. Later, Solène would find Elira staring at her own reflection again. "He touched my hair," she whispered. "He said it felt familiar." 2 days later, a parchment was drawn up. Lord Felk came with ink-stained fingers and a wax seal. Blind in one eye, with a voice like crumbling paper, he laid the scroll before the king. "Elira of the House Vale, 10th of her line, shall be wed to Prince Emric to preserve the purity of the blood." The king signed without reading. Emric signed with a smile. Elira was not asked, just measured. New dresses were sewn. Her arms were oiled, her ankles powdered, books were taken from her room, mirrors were left uncovered. Solène tried once more. "You don't have to do this. There are tunnels beneath the orchard." But Elira only looked at her with something strange in her eyes. Not fear, resignation. "This is what I'm for," she said. "They've been building this bed since before I was born." And when Solène looked down, she realised. The child was sitting on it, the wedding bed, draped in white, embroidered with lions, framed in carved oak, large enough to swallow her whole. She reached out, ran her fingers across the sheets. "They stitched the family crest in the centre," Elira whispered, "so no one forgets where I'm meant to bleed." There was no procession, no petals thrown, no choir. The wedding took place in a side chapel where the ceiling leaked and the candles sputtered. Only 4 people stood witness: the king, the registrar, the priest, and the groom. Elira stood at the altar like a statue carved from bone. Her gown was white lace threaded with gold, but her body hadn't grown into it. The sleeves hung long past her wrists, the neckline dipped too low for a child. Her shoes had been stuffed with wool to keep them from slipping. The ring didn't fit, so they tied it on with ribbon. Prince Emric didn't look at her, not truly. He looked through her, as though measuring the years she had left, as though they were coins in his hand and he was already spending them. When it was done, he kissed her, not on the lips, not on the cheek, but on the centre of her forehead, like closing the eyes of a corpse, and then he said, low and close, "Your blood is ready now." That night, Elira locked the door from the inside. She slid the iron bolt with trembling fingers, wedged a stool beneath the handle, pushed a table against the wood, then sat cross-legged on the wedding bed and waited. The room was too quiet, too still, until it wasn't. The mirrors began to breathe. First the large one on the wardrobe, then the oval over the wash basin, the polished tray beside the fruit bowl, even the surface of the water inside the porcelain basin near the fireplace. They gathered. Her mirror sisters. Same face, same eyes, same loose curls falling over thin shoulders. One had blood at the mouth, another had fingers stained black, one had no mouth at all. They whispered in unison, a warning or a lullaby, or both. "Don't open the door. He won't stop this time. You're not the first. You're not the last." Elira pulled the lace veil over her face and rocked. Outside the door, footsteps, then fists, then fury. "Elira!" His voice cracked on her name. "This is your duty. You think you're the first girl to bleed for the crown?" She didn't answer. She pulled the veil tighter. The pounding grew louder. The king's voice was somewhere behind his. "Let her rest tonight. There's time," Emric snarled. "There was time last week. Now she is mine." He slammed his hand against the door again and again until the hinges groaned. But they held. Inside the room, Elira whispered something to the mirror. It wasn't a name, it was a request. "Take me away." The sisters smiled, and the mirror shimmered. She stood, stepped barefoot to the glass, touched it, palm to palm. Her reflection didn't mimic. Her reflection reached, and Elira laughed. For the first time in months, the sound was strange. Too high, too broken, a child's laugh in a tomb. Then she began to scream. Long, sharp, ragged. The stool cracked under pressure. The bolt shuddered, but still she screamed, until Emric stopped, until the guard stepped back, until even the king turned away, and, "Still," she screamed, until the mirror split down the centre, and something inside her mind, the thing that told her what was real, what was safe, what was human, broke, cleanly, like glass under pressure. The wedding bed remained untouched, but the girl who lay on it was no longer alone. She no longer blinked when people entered the room, didn't flinch, didn't rise, didn't speak. Elira sat on the windowsill like a doll half forgotten, hair unbrushed, fingers resting in her lap, lips parted slightly, as if waiting to remember how to form words again. But she hadn't forgotten. She just saved them, for the mirrors. They were all still uncovered, on orders of the king. She calms when she sees herself, the physician wrote in his record book. But they weren't reflections, not to her, they were alive. The Mirror Sisters had changed. They didn't only whisper now, they sang. Off-key lullabies, broken hymns, nursery rhymes twisted into something unholy. And sometimes they argued. "You should have opened the door. She'll bleed like we did. She already has." One slapped another in the glass. The crack didn't appear on the surface. It appeared in Elira's laugh, sudden, breathless, wrong. Weeks passed. She ate only when Solène fed her, bathed only when Solène whispered prayers beneath her breath, and slept only when her body collapsed from exhaustion. But one day it wasn't Solène who entered, it was the Queen. Maritha moved like a shadow stretched too thin. Her gown hung off her shoulders like it had been made for someone else. Her veil was absent for the first time. Her mouth trembled as she sat beside her daughter. Elira didn't turn her head. The Queen did not ask her to. Instead, she whispered, "I spoke to them too." The voice was not hoarse. It was torn, cauterized. A scar ran along the underside of her tongue, a thick, ridged seam no child should ever see. "They said I was telling too many truths," she rasped, "so they burned the words from my mouth." Elira looked at her, really looked, for the first time in years. "You saw them?" she asked. Maritha nodded. "They never go away." The next day, Elira followed the humming. It came from beyond the East Hall, a wing sealed since before her birth. The dust was thick, the air colder. A trail of petals led nowhere. Behind a tapestry of lions and fire, she found the door, and behind the door, the room. It was small, but the walls were full, portraits, dozens, maybe more, oil paintings in ornate frames, every girl with her face, every eye slightly wrong, some smiling, some weeping, some looking off canvas as though someone stood just beyond the edge, whispering secrets into their ears. The nameplates were worn, many were scratched out, but one still shone clear. Calienne died on her wedding night, bled through the sheets before the priest had finished his blessing. Another, Sereth, threw herself from the tower before the veil was tied. She walked the room in silence. Each face stared back, each one a ghost with skin, each one a warning. At the end of the row, a single frame hung empty. No canvas, no name, no plaque, just an outline in dust. She didn't need to ask. She already knew who it was for. Chambermaid Darla found her there hours later, standing in front of the void. The old woman didn't scold her, didn't ask questions, just placed a tray on the floor and said gently, "You're not the first to find them." Elira turned her head. Her voice was soft, childlike. "Do they all end here?" Darla hesitated, then nodded, but Elira smiled, wide, cracked, certain. "Then I won't." They called it a mercy, a private wing, a quieter space, a room for recovery. But the corridors echoed like confessionals, and every wall glittered with polished glass. A mirror in every room, that was the king's order. They soothe her, he said. They remind her who she is. But Elira didn't need reminders. She knew she was 12, and broken in the exact ways her blood required. Her hair was shorter now, not by choice, but by her own hand. Blades weren't allowed in the new wing, but glass shards were everywhere. One slip, one pull, and the curls fell like rope. She wore no shoes. She wouldn't. She said the floor whispered louder when her feet were bare. Prince Emmerich came every week. No guard stopped him. They said nothing when he slipped inside. They said nothing when he locked the door from the inside. When he emerged, he always looked calm. Too calm, as though he'd spilled something and wiped it clean. Solène began to wait outside. She timed the visits, tracked the bruises, noted which days Elira refused to speak afterward, which dresses went missing, which sheets came back stained. One night, she didn't wait. She entered, and what she saw froze her mid-step. Elira was curled before the mirror, knees tucked to chest, forehead pressed to the floor, naked, silent, blood smeared between her legs, drying in streaks down the insides of her thighs. She was humming, not to Solène, to them, the Mirror Sisters. They surrounded her now, clearer than ever, standing in the silver, pressed to the glass. One had ropes around her wrists, another had hands that dripped red. One simply pointed at Elira. Solène dropped to her knees. "Elira," she whispered, "what happened?" The girl didn't look up. They said it was my turn. Her voice was thin, like it had been left out in the cold too long. Solène reached for her, gently, slowly, as if approaching a wounded deer. But the moment skin touched skin, Elira flinched and screamed. Not loud, not wild. A sound like something leaving her throat that shouldn't. "They said I had to," she sobbed. "They said I had to do it or I'd become like them." Solène wrapped the girl in her own cloak, pressed her against her chest and rocked her the way mothers rock infants. "You're not them," she whispered. But even as she said it, she saw their faces in the glass, all of them watching, all of them silent, waiting. The next morning the king made no inquiry. Emmerich left the castle whistling. The physician wrote another entry. Hysteria escalating, bleeding regular, delusions intensifying. No one mentioned the trail of blood smeared on the corridor wall. No one asked why Solène began sleeping in the hall outside the door, blade tucked into her boot, a bell tied to her wrist so she'd wake if it was moved, a mirror in every room. So Elira would never be alone. That was the reason they gave. But solitude had never been her fear. Her fear was reflection. Because reflections never lie, they only wait, until you become what they already know you are. They sealed the wing in the middle of winter. No announcement, no mourning, no procession of priests or clergymen, just thick boards nailed across arched doors, and iron keys melted down into nothing. No one asked why. By then there were other things to worry about. A rebellion in the east, a famine, a wedding between distant cousins with stronger heirs. Elira's name was quietly scratched from the family tree, not crossed out, erased, as if she had never been born. The staff understood, not because they were told, because they had seen it happen before. The palace had a way of forgetting girls who bled too early, who spoke to their reflections, who saw what others pretended wasn't there. And if they didn't die young, they disappeared anyway, between stone and silence. A new portrait was hung in the West Gallery, a blooming young cousin with full cheeks and empty eyes. She wore Elira's necklace, and no one mentioned it, not once. The mirror rooms were left untouched. The glass still hung on the walls, the tapestries still fluttered despite the absence of wind. Some say the dust refused to settle, others said the air tasted of salt. Years passed, then decades. But still, chambermaid Darla returned, every year on the same night, the winter solstice. She brought a single beeswax candle, lit it outside the sealed door, and whispered a name that no longer had meaning to anyone but her. Sometimes she swore she heard humming from the other side, sometimes something else, a breath, a knock, a laugh, and once, just once, the sound of shattering. But when she reported it, no one wrote it down. You might think this is just a ghost story, a girl who was never meant to be remembered, a cautionary tale about madness and mirrors and bloodlines too tightly coiled. But you'd be wrong, because the truth never left. It was just refracted, split across glass and time and silence. And sometimes, if you stand in the wrong room at the wrong hour, it finds its way back. One cleaner swore it. She was scrubbing the silver in the north corridor when she caught movement in the reflection. She thought it was her own hand until it moved differently. Too slow, too soft. She leaned closer and saw her. A girl, hair to her waist, eyes too wide, hands pressed to the mirror, lips moving without sound, mouthing something. But no voice came through. The cleaner ran. She was dismissed 3 days later for unreliable temperament. No one asked what she'd seen. They didn't have to, because everyone already knew. You know too, don't you? You feel it. The way a name lingers behind your teeth. The way silence holds its breath near old doors. The way mirrors sometimes show you more than you gave them. You wonder where she went. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe she never left. Maybe she's just waiting, watching, for someone who'll finally speak the names no one dared carve in stone. The girls with blood on their wedding, sheets. The girls with ribbons around their wrists. The girls with cracked smiles and unopened letters. The girls who look like you. You never screamed. They never opened the door. And the mirror still waits.